Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
for tracks, obviously. On the lot.
He became steel resistant.
Welcome everyone to another podcast for Earthworks Hub. I've got a guest with me today, and I think a lot of you guys will probably already know him because one of my first, maybe I think he might have been the second or third guest I had was Mr. Hayden Kinghorn, and he made mention of this man, and he told him that he was his mentor, and apparently this guy's a guru. So I introduced you today, Mr. Levi Adams from Adams Civil. How you going, man?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So Mr. Kinghorn had a few good words to say about you. So tell us a bit about yourself. So what do you do and your company?
Yeah, so I am probably close to third generation civil contractor. I'm in my mid-30s now. I operate the business with my older brother. So we do work Australia-wide, mainly in industrial infrastructure, so oil and gas companies and water boards and things like that. And we kind of market ourselves as a small one-stop shop. So we take a wide variety of scopes on board. So it's good for us because we have a big transition of work, and obviously it just kind of makes the days a bit more exciting, not doing the same stuff every day. But yes, we've been running it for now close on 15 years. So it's been a good, exciting journey thus far. So.
Yeah. No, I see your Instagram post and that, so I know you do a fair bit on there, and I'm just amazed, man. There's so many machines on there that looks like you've had or you've still got. I look at your projects. I see you do a lot of stuff, like you were just saying, end to end, sort of. So it's not just the digging part. Like I've seen you doing concreting in there, paving, herbs. I don't know. I saw a whole bunch of stuff on there. So why do you guys choose to do that instead of just doing what a lot of other subbies do, which is just sort of operate on hourly hire and stuff?
Well, it's partly because of mine and my brother's personalities, has a lot to do with it. I've got a very short attention span, and I do like to keep myself, I would say it's a bit of a character flaw, but I always look for something a bit more challenging. So I suppose we perpetually was looking for something a bit different, and we've kind of had because of that philosophy of always been happy to try something a bit different or do something a bit different or try something that I don't see many other people doing. And then also, like it was second, my old man started this business. We're third generation. My grandfather was a civil contractor. He did big jobs in the 60s and 50s. His biggest job was a 1.6 million yard cut in 1960, and he had twin engine 50 yard scrapers and things like that. A couple of big dozers and stuff. And then sort of mid 90s, he kind of transitioned and handed the works that he had over to my dad. And then dad started essentially what is Adams Civil today in 94. And so before he got into civil, he was a concreter. So we've always had that kind of stream of concrete. Like we sort of come from concrete into civil, what he did. And then obviously when I was working with dad, we did concrete and civil and pipelines. Dad was kind of happy to have a go at everything. And then in 2011, he had a heart attack and passed away, unfortunately. And then I was at university doing mechanical engineering in my third year. It was 4 days before my 21st birthday. He had a heart attack. So I quit uni, and my older brother was working for Coffee Geotechs, which some of you might know, a Melbourne-based geotechnical company. And he quit his job, and we just dove in.
Yeah.
And then since that, we were doing sort of concrete and civil jobs as part of the old man's jobs that he had, and we had some amazing people who backed us back then, and then we kind of evolved from that. And so that was kind of why we ended up sort of having all these varied scopes. And then sort of as we went along, we just had to go. Like I suppose I've got that character flaw where I look at someone else doing it and think it can't be that hard. And I've been proved time and time again that is not the case. You know, I bought my first curb machine because I thought, no, look, I watched the videos on YouTube. You just pour the concrete in and away you go. And I think, anyone who's done curbing would realise it's a bit of a dark art, and it's a lot to being a good curver, and there's a lot of things that need to go your way to deliver good products. And I learned that the hard way. But yeah, I think that was kind of the attitude that we've always gone with. Well, we'll just give it a go and see how we go.
Yeah. I reckon you sort of need that, yeah. And you can't be stale, man. In our field, you just got to be able to diversify and try different things. Because if you just stick to one thing, I mean, you can. A lot of people do choose to do that if that's what they want to do. But if you've got that personality, just like you're saying, yeah, where you want to try different things and you always think it's not that hard, I can do that. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, it hasn't worked a lot of times, actually.
Yeah.
And I find that the big stuff ups is where you learn. Like the first day of curbing we did with the curb machine, it ran like a dream. It looked awesome. Like we were just thinking, how easy is this? We're chuffed. And the second day of curbing was a train wreck. The whole thing fell to bits. I ripped it out, and it was just like, you know what? I learned nothing on that day one. I learned heaps on that second day. So I think it's like, you just got to give it a run sometimes, and when it comes back to bite you is usually when you learn.
Yeah, and that's a fair point too, man. Yeah, the only way to learn is to learn from mistakes. It
Yeah.
happens. It happens. Are you still doing the curbing now, or did you get rid of it?
Nah, I gave the curbing away. It was really good as an educational point of view, and like we had, you know, an arrow curb machine, which is the traditional one you'll see around, a little push machine, and then we also had a slip former, which was a power American built 10-ton on 3 tracks that ran on string lines. That was really a really cool bit of kit. It was very difficult to use, particularly in Australia, because Australian isn't really geared to run slip form curves as much. I know a couple of people have managed to get it working, but we struggled a bit. With just nobody in Australia having used them before. It was really hard to get guys that are familiar with them. And then B, the concrete, you were so dependent on good concrete, and it was very hard to get consistent slumps from concrete plants because they've never done it before either. So that was probably, I think people have made a good run of it now, but it was quite challenging when we had one.
A quick shout out to our platinum sponsors, Earth Moving Warehouse, Melbourne Tractors, and TMC Cancella. Yeah. No, it's not an easy thing. Like you say, it's a bit of an art form. I remember helping a lot of the Kirby's out and stuff. It was just not easy. Yeah, not easy.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say to you is, like, so you say you've come from, like, you know, a generation of operators and contractors. How did you learn? Because a lot of people always ask me that question. What was it like the first time you jumped on and learned how to use a machine? How did you actually do it?
I would have been probably 7, I reckon, maybe less. My dad was a horrible teacher. Like, he was very much chuck them in the deep end and hope they swim kind of attitude. So I think it was pretty much, you know, he would have spent 2 minutes showing me what the controls were and just sort of sent me off, go dig a hole over there kind of thing. So we're cleaning out dams. I remember I would have been, maybe 7 or 8, and we were cleaning out the dam at home, and I got a real big, heavy bucket of wet clay, and I never knew that you're supposed to pull the weight in as you go out over the side of the tracks. Like, that wasn't something that I was really familiar with back then. So I just full bucket, full reach, full slew. And then, of course, got halfway around and the whole thing overbalanced. There's a 20-tonner, and I nearly went out the front window. And I was fairly distraught about that as a 7-year-old. And Dad was just like, don't worry about it. It'll be right. You'll be right. Pull it in next time and away you go. So it was a little bit more like that. And I didn't really probably actually learn. That was just like, you're familiar with controls as a kid, and we used to just play around with it a bit. But I don't really think I learned to operate till I was probably 16 or 15 months. And 9 months, we went to work with Dad on the school holidays. So it wasn't until probably, I would say 7 or 18 that I actually probably spent a significant stint, you know, 2 or 3 months in a digger on site, and kind of had the ability to, and it was just, we started with like same way I train operators now, you know, go clean up a stockpile, or, you know, load our tipper so they can get familiar with loading trucks, and just, you know, all the stuff that's relatively low risk. You're not digging around services or next to assets or anything like that, just sort of where you can have a bit of room. And, you know, I always tell the boys half buckets and things like that until you start getting a feel for the machine, and bits and bobs, like all the same stuff. So that was good when we had, and Dad had a couple of good operators that were working for him back then. So I had some people who gave me some good advice about what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. I forgot to actually ask at the start, where are you guys actually based?
We're out of Woodend, so just northwest Vic, so halfway between Melbourne and Bendigo.
Yeah. Nice place there, man. Very nice place. Yeah.
Yeah, God's country. Best small
Yeah,
town in
that's the one.
Victoria.
Yeah, lovely place. We ride our motorbikes up that way, and then we stop, and there's always that nice pub on the corner where everyone sits there, and out in the front garden bit and stuff. Nice area, very nice.
No, it is good. No.
And
Love
the bakery. Can't forget the bakery on the corner as well.
Yeah, can't forget the bakery. Yeah, local icon.
Yeah, that's the one. The bikes are parked everywhere, all over the footpath.
Yeah, that's it.
The locals must love us, yeah.
Oh, there's heaps, yeah. My niece's first words, I think, were Berkey's Bakehouse. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, no, it is. It's a nice little town. And that's where Hayden's from, isn't he? He's at Kinghorns.
His folks are literally a stone's throw away. We grew up probably within a couple of kilometres of each other.
Yeah, nice. All right, cool. So you're based here. So you're saying that you do national work. So you guys travel a lot. So what do you do when you've got projects like do you do interstate ones too as well? You're saying?
Yeah, we do a couple of interstate jobs. We wouldn't say it's not the majority of our work, but we're happy to travel. I wouldn't probably sign up for massive interstate projects, but we do a series of smaller jobs interstate that kind of, and usually pretty niche stuff, like stuff that it's cost effective to fly us in, opposed to get a local guy who hasn't done it before, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
and it's usually all oil and gas work for that, because they're fairly risk averse in the way that they operate. They prefer to, you know, get people who've done it before rather than try and train someone up on their projects. So a lot of that stuff we do, which I enjoy. We enjoy interstate work. It's always good to see different parts of Australia and different challenges, and it's very enjoyable.
Yeah. No, it is. I reckon it's good. You get to experience a bit of everything, well, different places
Definitely.
anyway. Yeah. So tell us about the machines. So looking at your Instagram and that, there's heaps of different machines. Recently, it looks like you bought a D3 or something. Did I see that? Is that?
Yeah,
Did you?
got a little dozer.
Is that a new one?
It wasn't a new one, no. It was a Rogue Ritchie Brothers button click, that one. So it was kind of that's pretty cheap. I'll slap a bid on that, and then no one else bidded. And then I was, well, I guess I got that. So it's not a bad little dozer. It's done 6,000 hours. And we gave it was a little bit rough, so I gave it a respray. Got a razor way down in Pakenham. He's a fantastic guy, and he does all my paint stuff. So he gave it a freshen up, and it's been a really good little dozer. Yeah, it's actually been probably something that we kind of tweet at having for a while, just because we found that we run a box plate on a posi track, and then we have a D6, and then we also have a 12-foot grader. And we found something in the middle would have been, so especially on doing GPS work and final trim dozing and blading out rock would have been handy. So it's worked out well. Whether or not it'll stay in the fleet's yet to be seen. But it's on its third job now, and we'll see. It's just recently put a loom on it for GPS, so we'll see how it goes with the in the long run, whether or not it's going to be viable or not. But yeah, it's a good tractor, and they're a good size, a lot more pushing power. Considering they're only marginally bigger than a skid steer, significant step up in terms of traction and pushing ability.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, that's true. So I noticed you've had a lot of different machines in that. Like, how are you choosing what to do? Like, when to change machines and that? Like, what makes that decision for you?
I run usually off a higher system. So if I find, as much as I would just love to go shopping, I find that if I haven't got a gap that I need to fill. So usually, like when we initially made the step into buying a track skid steer, we had wheeled ones, and this is kind of probably 10 years ago. We hired a couple of them, and then we started to see that I was getting enough work to make repayments, and then once I had enough work to make repayments, then I opted to buy. So often I'll do something like that. It'll be like, well, I'm not sure whether this is the right decision yet, so we'll hire one for a little bit, and if I start to see that this is a good fit for our business, then we'll pull the trigger and go. And so, like in hindsight now, there's a lot of things that I would have bought earlier if I had my time again. But I do think like we've always been relatively, I'd say I'm probably more risk averse than some of the people I know in business. And that's mainly because we've had a couple of scares over the years where people haven't nearly gone under because someone hasn't paid you and things like that. And so now I'm a little bit more cautious of being over leveraged. And as much as I'd like to have everything now, I realise that a heap of repayments don't necessarily work for the business in the long run if I do get caught out in that scenario.
Yeah. And do you think that's because, like if you're doing an end-to-end job, you know that you might need this machine for that, so you can just either go rent it and see how it goes and then give it back, or if you don't need it for the next one, doesn't matter, yeah?
I don't edit the next one, but yeah, obviously I don't like renting stuff because obviously you pay a premium for it. But it's also that it's just part of the business. Sometimes you need to. It's not viable to buy everything you need to run a job. You just try and minimise your exposure to rental
Yeah.
and buy the stuff that gets a good return. So we try and keep it a bit like that. And obviously obvious stuff that you use all the time, like diggers. Diggers that get such a huge versatility for us, particularly because they're our site crane, and they're also your clean up or moving, a lot of the times I'll get used as a wheelbarrow. Now we've got, today the diggers will be moving the flex drive pumps into the bog holes and things like that. So like you do get a lot of rolls out of an excavator, which obviously make them a lot easier to purchase because they're not as niche.
It's true, yeah, and they're multi-purpose, yeah, exactly. You can use it as a crane and to move stuff around, and like you say, yeah, you can do everything with them, yeah. Even though people say, do you believe it's true? Everyone always talks about how you shouldn't track very far with a excavator, because I always hear people say that, oh no, it's no good to track, man, it's not good on the drives. But then I look at the new, all the new style posi tracks and that, and track ladders, and they've got the same sort of undercarriage, and I think, hang on a minute, how come you can go all day on one of those, but you can't track on an excavator? This looks like the same drive, I don't know.
Yeah, and I just think you got what you got and you use what you have. Like it's not, you can get caught into what you should and what you shouldn't and all this kind of stuff. And like, I've got a job that I need to do today, and I'm not going to put the boys in gumboots and drag the pump into the water when I've got a digger sitting there doing nothing. Like it,
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes you do stuff that you think maybe we should have reconsidered that, but a lot of the times I think you do complete the work you got in front of you and don't get too caught up on the what ifs and what ifs.
Yeah, yeah. I see. Like even now, you're doing this while you're at work, and that's so obviously you're still like heavily involved. Do you find yourself still on the tools and that? Do you think it's like what you have to do, or do you choose to do that, or what? Go.
I enjoy working. We're not a real big business. We're only kind of got 10 employees, and we probably run maybe 3 or 4 subbies at the moment. So we're probably running 15 guys today. So I still do a lot of work on the tools, and I enjoy doing the work. And I'd say that's probably been for my benefit and for my detriment. Like, you probably could have, if we had been a lot more willing to be off the tools, we probably would have pushed to be bigger a lot earlier. But on the flip side of the coin is, I think, knowing the trade and knowing what needs to be done makes it a lot easier to train the boys and a lot easier for us to, figure out where our gains can be. If you don't really know where you can improve, if you're not doing the job, it allows you to pick your efficiencies and different systems and stuff like that. So there's still an element that I would never want to be removed from the work scope, because, you can make or break by having better systems or coming up with a different way of doing things, which is a lot easier to do when you're on the work front.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And some of my recent guests have said that too. Like they've said they stepped away for a little bit, thinking they can sort of hand the reins over to someone else in the company, and then lo and behold, suddenly they're in debt. The company's not doing well.
Yeah.
Things happen they've had to come back in and start again. So I suppose it's better to maybe stay involved.
I think it is very difficult. Like, I would view our business as a skilled labour business. Like, that is essentially the service that I offer. So it is obviously a lot harder it's not like I'm packing shelves, or like my wife runs a napkin business and she packs napkins and sends them to people. Like, it's a relatively easy skill to transfer to somebody else. You can get someone in and teach them how to do the job in a day, when I don't really have that luxury. So it does make it a little bit harder to kind of palm that off to somebody else, unless they're kind of equivalent, spend enough time doing what I'm doing. And then usually if they're, spend 15 years doing it, they're either running their own show or they're, fairly getting looked after fairly well at another business. So it's kind of very hard to find the person uniquely to do that. And it's something that we toyed up. I think we'd be looked to sell the business as an entirety, rather than like either run it or not at all, not try and proxy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, that's actually, it's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. And you were talking about training and stuff. So how do you go? Do you have the same issues with employees as everybody else? And then how do you tackle all these employee things?
Oh, employees look, I love working with the boys we've got at the moment, and I love all the guys that work in the business. And I think that is, if I was to say, the biggest reason why I've stayed running a business is, I think anyone who's run a business particularly would say there's a lot of reasons not to run a business, particularly in the current economic climate and all the stuff the government puts on you in terms of, there's heaps of stuff that you've got to do now and heaps of stuff that you're responsible for. And, you often, I think everyone who runs a business has that thought train, I'm just going to sell everything and I'm just going to go work for someone else. That's, everyone's been down those days. But I do think that, like, having control over my work culture and the guys that I go to work with would be the biggest drive. And it's like, I kind of monitor this with other people in the industry. It's something that I kind of mentally keep track of, is like, people who work for other people, what is their job satisfaction like? How do they enjoy it? And the common thing I see is they find it very hard working in other businesses' cultures to be happy. Like, the culture of the business is essentially defines your happiness going to work. So I find for me that if I was to say my main goal in Adams Civil is I want a job that I'm happy to go to. Life's pretty short. My old man died at 54. He worked his whole life and never really got to do anything he wanted to do. So if I'm going to spend my life working in this industry, I want to enjoy the days that I go to work. And so for me, that is the priority. Is like, well, I want to engage people who work for me. I want them to also enjoy going to work, because by default, if they're having a bad day, I'm probably going to have a pretty bad day too. So I want them to enjoy going to work. So it's a lot more of, in terms of personnel, it's like, well, I want to pick people with good attitudes. I'd say attitude is by far the definer. So, skill set's great, all that kind of stuff. It's always good, always a bonus to be really well trained and a good operator and all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to be sad every day going to work and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to find it very difficult to go to work with you. And that's probably going to be the bigger indicator. So I do want people who are happy to have a go and happy to go to work. And that's probably what I look for most in the people that I employ, is like, well, I actually want people that I enjoy spending time with.
Yeah.
And then everything else is, I can train a bloke to drive a digger. I can train a bloke to drive a dozer. I can teach someone how to use GPS. I can teach them how to read a plan and do this and do all that. I'd actually say that's probably easier than trying to get someone who's not interested in being there to be interested to be there.
Yeah.
So that's probably, I'd say, the most thing. And I think training on the job, we always do on the job training. I think there's a lot of improvements in our business, in our training, in terms of just basic stuff like, and this is something that I'm going through now. It's kind of like, well, how do I because everything's a lot more verbal. Like a lot of small businesses, it's kind of, and I'm trying to go through the process of writing down, what are our standards on this, what are our standards on that, what are we trying to do, so it's a little bit more clean and concise for the boys that this is what we expect of you, not so much that verbal training, because everyone gets a different picture, then it's quite hard for them to track that. So I do find that that's something that I think there's a lot of improvement in our business, and I would say there's probably a fair bit of improvement as an industry as well, because I don't think the industry training is really there, and I hope it's getting better. But like all my tickets were pretty much Weedy box tickets. I went down there, I started the dozer, I drove forward and back, and he gave me a dozer ticket. Like it was kind of like, well, I have no idea how to cut a level, I have no idea how to build a dam, I have no idea what the safe working slope of this machine is. But here we go, I've got a ticket and off I go. So
Yeah, I was the same, man. You just turned up. Yeah, take the bucket off, put the bucket on. The track over there, track back. Yep, good. All right, what else do you want? The skid steer, loader. What else do you want?
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
chicken flick.
add it all on. No worries. Yeah, flick. Yeah, put them on. Yeah.
So, and I don't really see how that's going to change the industry unless you're going to go like the only reason it works for sparkies and plumbers is they've got a panel or a board that controls the industry that says that this, you got to come and get your inspection on your sewer, you got to do this, you got to do that, and it's standardized. But until the civil contractors implement something like that, I just think it's always going to be a bit of a difficult one, because there's not really a standardized training. There's not really a trade. Like they've got that Cert 3 and things now, but it doesn't really seem to carry as much value as some of the other trades. So it's just kind of a difficult one.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's a common theme, man. Like we always talk about it, and I've always had these ideas about like making like an apprenticeship or trainee system, and to be honest, I haven't really looked that far into it, but already at the start of it, there was all these little hurdles. So I was like, all right, not too hard, leave that. So I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
It's just too hard to formalize it. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I think at the moment, everyone just relies on sort of on the job training, and then
Yep, definitely.
just and a lot of bluffing. This has come up heaps too. Heaps of guys say they just had to bluff their way through and say, yeah, I can do it, and then just work it out. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I think I look back at when we first started, and like we had no idea what we were doing. I have a lot of sympathy for people who I was at a job recently and there was another contractor there, and he was like they're having a red hot go, but they're having a bit of a hard time with it. And I remember the client was kind of making client comments, oh, these guys, and I was like, well, at least they're rocking up every day and they're having a go, because when I first started, I remember we laid a drainage line backwards and had to rip it all up, and just like everything we did just took forever, and it's just like you'd rock up and you work your guts out for a whole day and just get nowhere, and it's just like it was just really hard. Like it was just really hard work. And even now, I think like we done probably our first biggest, like we don't do any really much piling or any drilling. And we did a scope of the last project was probably the most amount of drilling we've done. And I just felt like it took a lot longer than it should have. And we finally kind of nutted it out towards the end of it, and we kind of got a good systems, and it was all going well. And I remember my younger brother, he's been working, and he kind of said, he's like, oh, gee, it just took so long to do that scope. And I was just sort of stopped and I thought about it. I'm like, well, actually, when we first started, that was every scope. Every scope took a long time. Everything took forever. It was just like we would just work so hard and get nowhere because we just didn't really know. You would do things backwards, and now in retrospect, you know exactly what to do. Like, this is how we do it. That's how we do it. This is how we get compaction. You wouldn't stuff around with string lines and a laser trying to figure falls. You just get a GPS machine in and away you go. Like it's all that kind of stuff that's so common knowledge to me now. But back when we first started out, it was really hard fought. And I think like it's, if you're having a hard time out there and you listen to this pod, just rocking up and having a crack, just keep going with that and you'll get there eventually. But it is, sometimes it's not very easy. And it can be very unpleasant.
It's true, and you can get disheartened because you start losing money. There's all these factors in there, and then just the point is that you might lose money this time, maybe next time, but the next one after that you'll be better and quicker and do it a bit more efficient.
Yeah,
and then and you work out better ways to do things, and like you say, even drilling. There's always different ways to do things.
And sometimes it's just the missing tool. We had where we were drilling was just soft black pus clay and then basalt rock. So you put the auger in, and as soon as you hit the rock, the auger's straight through the wall because there's no resistance in the dirt. So then you're using the core barrels, and the core barrels are filling up full of clay, and you can't get them clean. It's like, and like we just got one of those clean out spheres, and lo and behold, they shifted the whole job. And sometimes it's not like you don't know what you don't know, And I've had to go on and chat to someone who did it every day. He'd be like, oh, just clean out the core barrels of the spear and away you go. But it's just like sometimes it just takes time, and it's just part of the process. Like I said, you learn stuff and you pick stuff up, and now we're a bit more conscious of writing things down now. So now we try and do at the end of each job, we try and do a lessons learnt, like what do we do well, what do we do wrong. So I might not do a job like that for 5 years, and in 5 years' time I can pull that out and say, well, actually, this by the end of this job, this is how we figured it out, the best way to drill, box, and pour this style of footing, and then you got that knowledge for the next time. And I think that was something I never did 10 years ago. I would learn all these lessons and then not necessarily write them down, and then kind of I wouldn't have to start again, but I would definitely have to relearn some things because I'd forget about it by the time I went back to do it again.
Yeah.
So I think, note keeping something that's always fairly important.
That's good. That's actually a really, really good bit of advice there. So anyone that's listening, definitely take that advice. Definitely. So you talk about technology. You're obviously using like GPS and that you were saying for a bit earlier. How has that helped your business?
Hugely. I would say mainly in materials. I'd say we've definitely we're not going over. Like the jobs before GPS, we'd always end up going over on crushed rock and concrete for over excavation and bits and bobs, but we don't really seem to be able to hit our quoted amounts, which is obviously really good for us. That's a huge saving. And then also I do feel for just your ability to deliver better quality work in a shorter period of time. So, the automated stuff is just really good. Like the excavators and especially the graders and stuff on the total stations, you just get such a good result out of them, which, mirrors across to everything. So I run all Leica stuff. I'm really happy with Leica stuff. I really like that they give me a solution for everything. That was probably my main, that and also CR Kennedy. I had a really good couple of guys at CR Kennedy that have really supported us and really made it easy to deal with. But yeah, I liked that I could get rovers, total stations, grader systems, digger systems, and I liked that everything was interchangeable. I can get a digger system, like I run the GPS box out of a digger system, I chuck it in the dozer, and then I chuck it in the grader, and it allows me to have multi-machine systems, so I have to just put a loom on each machine, and then if I need an additional system, I can pick up an additional system. I don't need to go spend 70, 80 grand each machine to try and run a full system. I can just spend the 15 or 20, whatever a loom is, and then move from there.
Yeah. No, I think it's just basically a necessity nowadays, especially if you want to be efficient and like you say, just even the material, yeah, exactly. Just working out materials and making sure you're using the right quantity and not over digging or going back and doing things twice. Just GPS would save everything.
You'd remember, like, pegs are always a huge thing on site.
Yeah.
Like I remember back at the start, you belt a peg and then you'd be like, crap, what am I going to do now? I've got no, there's me back a curb now. I don't know where that is, or, where's my corner of my pipeline? You'd have to get the surveyor back out and you could lose a day or two over belting a couple of pegs out. Things like that, which you don't have those issues anymore. I think I would have paid, if I had in 2011 when we took over the business, had gone aboard a GPS rover, it would have paid itself off every year I had it. I would say, like, if you're interested in getting into, especially if you're doing contract works like we're doing, like you are, I would say a rover is one of the best investments you'll ever make. Just, you can read the drawings, you can peg out back of curbs, you can peg out pits and all that kind of stuff, even check your RLs, like it's enough. And even build surfaces, like I've built entire jobs on my GPS rover, roads, site cuts, everything, asphalt, and literally just drawn them up off the plans on the rover, put them in the digger or in the grader, and then gone out and trimmed them. It's not the most efficient way of doing it, but you can do it. So that's made a big difference.
Yeah, that's true. No, it has. I imagine it would for most businesses. Yeah. And I also noticed you had a tilt rotator. You had an Incon.
Yeah.
How many have you got?
We just got one. We've got 2 machines with hitches on it. 8-tonner kind of set up for, I put an edge con hitch on it, but I haven't pulled the trigger on the tilt rotator. It's one of those, when I get a job that suits, I'll have a go at. Yeah, there's been a good bit of kit. I don't like tilt hitches because of the weight. I think most people who spend time with tilt hitches find them the overbalanced machines, especially for truck loading and stuff. I'd love to have a straight hitch. So that was probably the big push into it, was I had a job where I had a heap of detailed trimming. So it made sense to purchase that. And then I like the fact that I can drop it off and then rip, or, I don't have to have the tilt rotator weighing the front of the machine down all the time. That said, it pretty much lives on one machine. So we've got 2 wired up, but the 26-tonner, it very seldomly comes off, I would say.
Yeah. What did you, actually, speaking of the machines, I noticed you had some JCBs a while back.
Yeah.
Did you have a Tele skid? Did you have the one with the extendable
No,
arm
I didn't.
on it?
That come out after my time, the Tele skid.
Oh, okay.
I saw them the other week, actually. They looked interesting.
I reckon.
Yeah, it was interesting. We hired a couple of JCB skidsteers, and then I bought, the one we had was the first of the electronic over hydraulic, and that was a little bit more troublesome. I'm not sure whether what the new ones are like, but when we had it, I found it quite aggressive in its operation. It was quite difficult to operate with, and that was probably the main reason we got out of it. I loved the side entry and the visibility out of them was unbelievable. And like I said, the older ones that we had hired that were servo controlled were quite a good machine. But like I said, we didn't really have as good a run through the one that we purchased, and then we kind of moved out of that, and then so we ended up buying the Cat, the 299 after that, which wasn't a bad tractor either. So.
Yeah. So would you say that are you like brand loyal? Is there one brand that you really prefer over
No, I
another?
wouldn't say I'm brand loyal at all. No, I
No?
think I'm opportunistic and I'll buy something for the right price. But I'd say, look, our dealer support has become a huge factor now. I would say that the last couple of machines I bought from Melbourne Tractors, and it's purely because I had good dealer support. And that is a big thing for me now. It's like, well, I need to be able to pick up the phone, I need to be able to ring someone, and I need to be the person on the other end to come and rectify the problem that I have. So I think that's probably the bigger of the items that I'm concerned about now. And obviously I still want something that's nice to operate and it's reliable and the boys are happy to sit in it. I don't really spend much time in diggers anymore, so it's kind of like I want something that the people who do spend time in are happy to sit in. So I think that's probably the only real requirements. So look, I said, we've always kind of stuck with one of the Japanese brands for that reason. And look, I've had a great run out of the Kobelcos. I can't fault any of the Kobelcos we've had. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, they are. They're good machines too. Yeah, exactly. What have you got? I think, is it a 25? Is that what I saw?
we got a 26, which has been a really good tractor. It's only done about 1,500 hours, but yeah, no dramas whatsoever. And it's a nice, mainly we had that, we had a Cat 320 with the edge con on it. And I had a few dramas with just the GPS integration because we were running the Leica stuff and they run the Cat Trimble kind of hybrid thing. They never talked to each other. And it was kind of a big hoo-ha to get the Cat working on my base station and the localizations. And it was just kind of like, we need to go back to a digger that I can put a Leica system on. And then so I looked at it, and then I found that with the 320 with the edge con it was still quite heavy on the front of the machine. So I just went and got the biggest machine that I could run on my edge con, which was a 26. And that's a lot better balanced machine with the tilt rotator. Like you can run it, we still put the tilt rotator on our 20 tonner, but it's a lot more comfortable on the 26.
Yeah.
You're not so overbalanced.
Yeah.
So that was probably the main reason. And then obviously I went and put a lock system on that, so I had back to the same system for everything.
Yeah. What would you say out of all the machines that you've had, what would be your favorite bit of equipment? Not just excavator, like anything out of the trucks, the graders, whatever. What's your favorite machine?
I think different for different things. Like I said, there's things that I always wanted. I always wanted to buy dozers. So the dozers always, like first, that D6 we bought was always something that I've had. It was kind of I didn't have a lot of grand ambitions in running the business. It was like I wanted to have a dozer, a new digger, and buy a big digger. And I kind of done my 3 aspirations to run the business. But yeah, that was kind of one. I really like paving. I like the challenge of asphalting. We ended up with a paver not out of choice. It was kind of we had clients wanted really tight tolerances on their finished surface levels. And I used to really struggle to get subcontractors to deliver on spec. And I got told every time, it's a walk in the park, we'll deliver it, no dramas. So we had like a 0+15 tolerance on our asphalt services. And I just got tired of fixing other people's work. And then we kind of had a job that lined up that buying a paver would be the way to go. So we bought a paver. And then I hooked it up with a mobilizer system, and it's enjoyable because you just get such good quality work. Like I think we did 1,500 square meters recently and had 7 mil between my highest and lowest points. So plus and minus 3.5 mil we're running. So it's just like the quality of the work we can get out of them. So that's really enjoyable to kind of do something and deliver something that, is of a good standard, which I enjoy. That's probably one of my favorite things about the industry is being able to do something to a high standard and get the job satisfaction of being able to do that. So, but yeah, it's like all different stuff. I enjoy the challenge more than necessarily the individual machine aspect. I enjoy doing something a little bit different or making something I haven't done before or whatever that is. If it's something a little bit different, I'm happy to have a go at it.
Yeah, it's not just the one machine. And so when you talk about the paver, did you have to hire new guys for that, or did you
No,
manage
we
to
didn't
train?
actually. We just went rogue, really.
Yeah.
No, we done a lot of it in part because I used to always. We had a couple of. No, don't get me wrong. There's no disrespect. We had some really good subbies and they did really good work, and I used to jump on with them. So because I was that asshole client that would just be in. And I let the reins go on the first couple, and I'd spend 5 days on a blowtorch heating off high spots, and then so the last sort of 4 or 5 subbies, I was on the back of the machine with the laser, and I'd be like, "This is high, this needs to go down, this is low, need to chuck some shovels in there," and then I'd be on the rake. I'd be like, and I just think to myself, "Fuck, I must be difficult to deal with right now," but I'm just like, I need this to be right, and I cannot be bothered being here tomorrow fixing it. I just need it to be right. So I would just get in, and I learn a lot. And then I had a couple of guys that I would just, when they were there, I would just be bombarding them with questions. I'd just be like, how does that work? How does this work? What's that? What's this? Because we did hire a paver back in 2015. And it was a bit of a disaster in the sense that we kind of agreed to do something I never should have agreed to because I was inexperienced, which was try and pave asphalt over sand. And it was really, really hard work because the material under the back of the screed would like push a wave of sand in front of it. And it ended up being, so I learned a lot about paving back then, and we ended up having to do that whole job by hand because the paver was actually, there's too much weight in the screed, if that makes sense, and it'd push a pile of sand in front of the material. So I learned a little bit about paving then, enough that I understood how the machine kind of basically worked. And then kind of in the 10 or 15 times that I'd had asphalt subcontractors come in, I would just be an absolute squeaky wheel for them for the whole day and just ask a million questions until I had a pretty good idea about how things would work, and enough that I felt like I'd be confident to give it a go. But then I would say the first couple of days, because then I also agreed, because I'm not real clever, agreed to do a job in Karratha with a paver that I didn't own. So I bought the paver and then just did exactly what you said before, said, we'll go over there and do it. And just, it worked great. Had no dramas whatsoever. But it was a little bit like, why did I actually just do that? I probably shouldn't have agreed to this job, A, and why did I say I can do that? And then we just went over there and it went really well. I had no dramas and it was a really good job. I do think that I learned a lot by asking questions and trying to get in and help. Not that I probably was a help, I was probably more of a hindrance to them, but it was like, it was one of those situations where I needed the knowledge and I would happy to be the squeaky wheel to get the knowledge. So
yeah. But what about, so now, you're doing all these jobs from end to end, doing pavers, everything basically from start to finish. How did you learn to quote all these things for anyone that's wondering about quoting? And how do you do your quoting at the moment? Yeah.
So Luke, my older brother, does most of the quoting. So we have this, I'm kind of ops and employees now. This has only probably changed in the last 18 months. And then he's more project management and commercials. So he does a lot of the quoting, and look, that's two things. I'll make this comment about quoting. I'll make two comments about quoting as well, actually. I'm not a very good quoter because I am optimistic. I do have a preconceived notion that things are going to happen a lot faster than they actually do. My older brother is the opposite. He has a disposition that's a little bit more realistic. I think if you're a one-man band, be very conscious about your preconceived notion and the way that you lean, because I had a horrible tendency to underquote work, and I've done a heap of jobs for free. Just rocked up and done a favour because I'd said, look, it'll be 3 days and that's 5. And you've committed to a price then, so you just got to do the job. So I think a little bit of that was me and him also understanding that where our character strengths lie and then kind of moving the personalities, which I think is the biggest thing I've learned about employing people, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, is when you employ someone, try and understand their strengths and weaknesses and then try and migrate their role into one of their strengths. Because if you have people at a position, they cause issues for the whole crew because they're not doing this and not doing that. The guys got upset, this guy's doing this. But if you can push people into their strengths, it's usually a lot more beneficial for everyone involved. So a little bit more of that is me starting as I got a bit older and employed more people, is recognizing that about myself and then also recognizing that about the people who work for me. And then, look, it doesn't always work, but you want to try and help people sit in their strengths because everyone has got different abilities and different things that they'll do better than others. And if you can hold them in that, it seems to be a lot more beneficial for them and a lot more beneficial for the crew that they're working. So that was kind of one of the things is I kind of just stopped quoting work. And some of my clients are smart enough to realize that they should ask me for the quote, not Luke. But the other one was just like, it's really a personal relationship between you and the business. Like you need to get a gauge about what you can do something. I think one of the real dangers of quoting is that people think the lowest price is the correct price, which is not the truth. We have passed in on jobs where clients have come back in and said, listen, you're 20% more expensive. We've gone back and looked at our books and gone, they can't do that for 20% less than us. Sorry, mate, we're not interested in doing the job. And then I always check in at the other end of those jobs to find out. And usually the consistent theme is, oh, that wasn't a good job. They didn't make any money. It didn't go. And I'm like, it's not as much as it's really difficult because when a client comes to you and says, look, you're really expensive, your immediate thought is, fuck, what have I stuffed up here? What have I done wrong? We go back and you hunt through the quote like a madman. How can these guys be so much cheaper than us? you kind of have all these self-doubts. And then I suppose as we've done it a bit more and got a bit more secure, we trust our quoting process a little bit more. And we say, well, actually, no, we've done the right things. We've done our quantities. We've allocated the correct amount of time. This is the price that our business can do this, which is really important. Our business can do it at this price. Someone else's business might be able to do it for cheaper and make money. But that's not us. I've got our crew and our teams and our things, and we've got a pretty good metric about what the time it takes for our business to do that. So I think that's probably fairly important. And also just understanding that I think you can get sucked into saying these guys are cheaper, therefore they must be correct, which isn't the truth.
It's not. You're
They
right.
could be going to lose money. And I've
Yep.
seen it a number of times, when we've been blown out of the water, and then that it all kind of, the guy who wins it unfortunately has a really hard time because he's not, and it's like, I don't wish that upon anyone, but it does make it a lot harder if you kind of get caught up into that. So I think sometimes it's good to recheck, and like every time we do, if we find out that we're a little bit high, we always double check our pricing. Like it's always but like I said, we're not as concerned as probably we were years ago about being high if we know we're confident in our process and in our quoting. So, but I would say, yeah, it's always something that's fairly unique. And like I do it differently to my brother and he does it differently to other people. Like it's kind of, we have our own different ways and we always try and double check my method and his method that we're coming back with consistent numbers, And really it is only time. Like it's time, a little bit of procurement, but really most people should be on par with your procurement. Like there's not a big swing in concrete prices or crush rock prices. So it's really the big thing you're debating is how many people and how long it's going to take you.
Yeah, that's right. Even when I used to do my quotes, I'd allocate so much to just say tipping fees, and then I'd put a little buffer on there just in case that tip's closed and we have to go to another one. Or
100%, yeah.
And then I found often, like the only way, sometimes that used to happen to me, people would come in and a builder would say to me, for instance, oh, this guy's, he's like 40% cheaper than you. And then I go back and look at it and I think the only way he can be cheaper is I think maybe he's got a cheaper tip or he hasn't put any buffers on anything. He's not allowed for any variations to anything, any part of the quote. So he's left himself open for a big loss. And that's the only way. I don't know how they do it. Yeah, that must be, like you say, they haven't added any buffers to anything, and it's like you're running a fine line.
And you also, we contracts was something that we never dealt with until probably the last 6 or 7 years. And I used to always be, as a 20-year-old guy, a little bit nervous about signing stuff up for something. And now I would say my position on that is well and truly flipped. Like I wouldn't probably engage with someone without a contract, or at least some terms and conditions in place. So I think a lot of that is also, clearly defined and not overexposing yourself, because you can still go into a job for the right money, for the right margins, and lose if you've signed yourself up for some unnecessary risk. You could even just, you don't get along well with the client. I've seen time and time again people that I've worked for or worked with that have had, bad relationship with the client and it's cost them a lot of money. And I very, very conscious as a part of our business, and one of our core values is I want to enjoy going to work and I want my clients to enjoy coming to work with me. So that's a translatable, thing. So I always make a reasonably big effort to be on really good terms. And that is, sometimes you have business disagreements, and that's part of running the business. And, you're not going to agree with your client about X, Y, Z or this variation or that. And it's really important not to allow that to cloud the person, divide the job in the person. The client that I'm working for, it's his job. He's got a wife and kids and a family or whatever. I want to make sure that if I have a business disagreement with him, I don't have a personal disagreement with him. If that makes sense, because he's doing his job and he's usually, that's part of it is, reining in contractors is part of his job. And that's what he has to do sometimes, and I fully accept that. So it's like, I don't want to have that. I don't want to have a personal fallout with someone because of a business thing. And sometimes that means I've got to suck it up and take a hit, and other times you got to stand your ground and be prepared to do that. But it's definitely a measure of humility and a measure of, this guy doesn't need any more drama in his life. I don't need to have a big emotional outburst over something. So that's something that I kind of consciously think of now, particularly a bit more as we've done a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's true you got to have that sort of balance, because sometimes by letting something go, it might work out in your favor later, so don't get so stuck on it, if they owe you $1, don't chase them, so much for it, yeah.
It's always a two-way street. And like, it's, if you have good rapport with people, when you're exposed, they help you, and when they're exposed, we help them. And it usually comes for a lot more. I don't really want 100 clients. I want 5 good ones.
Yeah.
So I will always go in with a new relationship with the idea that I want this to be a 20-year client, and I'm going to view my dealings as if this is going to be a 20-year client, because you really don't know how things pan out, and you really don't know. And I do feel like, a job's a job, and making money's great and everything, but like I still want to live a life that I'm happy with, a life of integrity, and I still want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And I do expect that as a part of my business and my legacy is that I'm not going to move beyond the bounds of what I deem to be the correct way to behave. And I feel like your clients become a reflection of who you are. You know what I mean? If you treat everyone like a snake, don't be surprised if you're working for a bunch of snakes. So I think that is, if you prioritize those kind of values, more often than not, the clientele that you work for will have a like-minded value system to you. And it's a lot more reciprocal relationships, which is what you want to be. And you want to be in a reciprocal relationship. You don't want to be in a one-way street.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree, man. Very, very, very insightful there, man. Some words of
Yes.
wisdom, people. And I do, and I'm learning slowly. I'm a very slow learner in this field. That a handshake nowadays is not good enough. Like, I'm learning to start making, even though at the start of a deal, I'm like, yeah, it's all good. Don't worry about putting it in writing. We'll just, it's a handshake. Yeah, I trust you, man. It'll be all right. And then the shit hits the fan when at the end of the day, everything is all good at the start of the process. And then when everything goes downhill and goes sour and you've got no terms, no emails, you haven't even got anything in writing, there's no leg to stand on, and people will change when it comes to
Without a
money.
doubt. And I think
They can
that's
turn.
important.
Yeah.
Very important to have some kind of agreement in place.
Yeah.
And it's like we have, like a lot of the clients we have now, we have service agreements with them. So, or some of them do. Some of them we still do job-to-job contracts, and some of them we do service agreements. I quite like service agreements because we argue the terms once every 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going through every job. I don't like this. Your payment terms, this. I'm not happy with that. It's cost quite a lot of cost to a business to do contracts. Like, I think, most people know that. You read every contract we get from start to finish. And some of them are big, like, some of the contracts we get for little jobs. Like, I remember doing this little job and I got a 100-page contract, and I'm thinking, crikey Moses, like, I'll spend more time reading the contract than I'm going to spend doing the job.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's just part of it. And I do think that you need to, particularly, we're probably a little bit more prickly to deal with in contracts. So I will be prickly in contract negotiation, good on site. And that's a way I prefer to do it. For exactly what you said there, if you sign up to something, and I've seen it, like, one of our PMs used to work for, fantastic guy, would work for him every day of the week. Same thing, doing this job for a guy, had this PM on the project. They did a significant amount of variations. It was north of 100 grand's worth of variations. And then that PM's wife got sick. He's off the job. New PM comes in. Oh, it's not written down. Bad luck, not getting paid. And it's just like, exactly what you're saying. Really, you haven't really got a leg to stand on now because you haven't really probably followed the due protocols. As much as the protocols can be really tedious, you got to submit your claim on this date and you got to submit your variations on this and that. It does is an overall better result, I think, for both parties.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, there you go. Some lessons learned for everyone. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about lessons in this one.
Yeah, I spent my whole life.
Yeah, lessons. That's what I'm going to name this show. This episode, I'm going to call it Lessons Learned. Levi's Lessons. There you go. Levi's Lessons. There you go. What else is there? So look, we're probably getting towards the end here. Let's talk about, have you had like things stolen? We'll talk about theft a little bit.
Yeah,
towards
I've had
the end
that.
here. Have you? How was your experience with some of that?
Stolen. I was actually just laughing with a client the other day because he offered me a jumping jack, and I'm like, jumping jacks haven't been a good omen for me. I've bought 3 jumping jacks in my career, and every one of them has been stolen. It's just like, I don't know why. As soon as I buy a jumping jack, the container gets done over. So we had a couple. Like, we've had it's just part of it, I think, And we put the diggers in front of containers, and you buy padlocks and you do all that kind of stuff. But if someone wants to get in, they're getting in. And look, we haven't got tool insurance. There's always been a big debate about getting tool insurance, but it's obviously quite expensive.
Yeah.
So you just kind of cop it on the chin when it happens. But
yeah, and sometimes you pay, by the time you pay excess and then your premium goes up and all this, it's almost more than what the actual item they got stolen.
It would be. It would be. I'd say I've probably had, let's say, 20, 25 grand's worth of tools stolen in 15 years, which is not a lot. Like, I know a guy I know recently just had his ute done over, and he would have lost that just in his ute tools. I don't know what tool insurance was. It used to be 5 or 6 grand a year. So if you go, 5 times 15 years that I've been doing it, I'm still miles in front.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a hard one. Like, you try not to have too much gear on site, but then you also kind of have the boys without stuff. Like, it's kind of like, how much does it cost you for 5 blokes to stand around waiting on a spanner or something?
Yeah.
So it's, you kind of stuffed if you do, stuffed if you don't. And then we always toy between, because we usually do like multi-month projects. So a lot of the time we run out of shipping containers just because it's easy. And then you have the big debate about, do we go to work trucks and do it that way? And then, people say, my work got done over in my driveway. And you're kind of like, well, you kind of stuffed if you do, stuffed if you don't.
Yeah.
But like, we just pull the big ticket items out. Like, all the GPS gear goes home. But other than that, like, you just
hope someone's got some morals, or run the gauntlet, just let it go and see what happens.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see the business in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, where do you see yourselves going?
I'm happy with the business. I'd be happy to stay exactly where we are now. I really enjoy the business that we have now. I'd like to, I'd actually like to just build a really high performance team. If you ask me what my last 6 months of thought trains were, it's kind of like I've spent sort of 14 years learning the trade. I'm not a very good business operator. I feel like I'm almost starting again. I feel like took me so long to learn what I needed to do and how to do a job. And now it's like I'm almost back to square one. It's like, well, how do I build a business? How do I build systems? How do I build, organizational charts and all this kind of stuff? It's kind of like, and 5 years ago, if you had asked me, I'd have said, no, it's a waste of time. You don't need that. And now I kind of think, well, if I wanted to run 10 projects, how would I run 10 projects? I can't run 10 projects off my phone. So I need something in place. So it's kind of like, how would I do that? Like, what would that look like? And that's more stuff that I'm interested in. And it's also like, how do I, the people that work for me, I really want them to do well. Like, I really want them to move forward. So it's kind of like, how do I have a business culture in place that actually allows people to move forward, not just at work and in their abilities, but at home? Like, what are we doing? And that really comes back down to this one key thought train, which is that, I remember reading a study which was, you are the summation of the 6 people you spend the most time with. And I had a real big alarm bell. For me, it was because I'm like, I spend heaps more time with the boys at work than I do with anyone else. Like, they are by far the most hours a week I spend with the boys at work, which means that if I'm running this business and those blokes aren't getting better, I'm not getting better. It's they go hand in hand. I need the people that work for me to be moving forward. And as a retrospective reflection, I move forward with them. And so that is something that I kind of ponder a bit more now. It's like, it's really important as a business operator to be sewing into the guys that work for you and helping them move forward, because it will be a direct correlation to your ability to move forward. So I think that's kind of been, and it's been probably only now in the last kind of 12 months that I've had enough headspace to allocate some time to work on it. And like it took a long time to feel like I was capable and competent to do the trade, and part of that is because we've had to go at a lot of different niches within the industry. Another part of that is just because it was just, to learn, just takes time to learn. And, if someone said they want to start the business tomorrow, I'd say to them, go work for 10 years for someone else. Go make your mistakes on someone else's money. Go learn on someone else's business and then go out by yourself. And my friends who have done that, like Hayden's a prime example, are doing amazingly well. They're flying along. They're doing really good business, really good clients. And I couldn't be prouder of them. And I kind of think I'm not sad about their thing, but I do feel like we've had to learn everything ourselves. And it's been really hard work to do that. There's some advantages in that because I feel like we're a lot more happy to take on risks and a lot more, because we've always had risk. We've always had that. So that's a lot more comforting for us, that space to be, jumping into the deep end, because we've always sort of elevated in that. I've always felt like I've been out of my depth. So I'm happy to be out of my depth. It's not really a concern anymore. But I do feel like it would have been a lot of advantages in being able to work under someone else and learn from someone else and not kind of have to try and, fumble and flounder my way through and figure things out. And so I think there's an advantage to both sides, but I do feel like if I was starting again, I'd be working for a one-man band. I'd be working for a company our size. I'd be working for a John Holland. I'd just have a go at everyone, work for 5 or 6 companies of different sizes and then just cherry pick all the good stuff and take that and start something.
Yeah, there you go. That's the wise man's approach, man. I like that. That. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, take like you say, pick the best bits out of everything, then go out and start on your own, and you've got a bit of a head start. Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Got a huge head start. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say earlier? You were saying that you obviously spend a lot of time with your workers, and I had that sort of, not an issue, but I had that. I call it a struggle, because how did you go drawing that line between being a boss and a mate with your workers? Because I always had that.
Not very well.
That was an issue for me all the time. And my wife used to say, you spend too much time with them and you're too friendly. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I work with them every day. But then there was a bit of a struggle when sometimes I had to make a decision or do something that I don't know. It was a bit hard. I always found it hard. How did you handle it? Or how do you handle it?
I think it's always a struggle. I think that's I wouldn't say I found it easier, and I think, you have a series of conversations that sometimes need to be had that you put off. And I find that, it's difficult to have difficult conversations. It's just, and I do feel like when I was younger, I put them off and I wouldn't say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done. And now I'm a lot more like, well, no, and I found that the difficult conversations I've had, I don't think any of them have been to my detriment. They've always been a better outcome for both parties. You have stuff on site, people aren't connecting, not doing well, and it is hard to break the boundaries sometimes between friend and boss. But I do feel like, sometimes you just got to pull them aside, go down for coffee, go to the pub and just say, hey mate, YZ, this is why you're here. This is why we're having a chat. And, sometimes you need to do stuff out of the ordinary. Some of our guys, they struggle to work on site. I'll just ring them at 6 o'clock every morning and say, hey mate, are you in the car? And I'm happy to do it. Because, I feel like I have a lot, and this is part of me making so many mistakes when I was learning. It was just like I struggled with a lot of stuff, and I would have loved someone who would have got behind me and helped me along a bit. And so I view that as an opportunity now I have to do that to these people who, particularly the younger guys who work for me. It's like, well, I never had that. I never had someone to do that. I remember even when Dad died, like it took me hours to find a supplier. I remember I spent half a day trying to find this guy that made this pipe fitting. And it was just like, I could have rang Dad and he would have told me in 30 seconds, bring this guy, this is where you get that from. And like, and it's just little things like that you don't really have. And I do feel like, there's a responsibility for the older guys in the industry to try and help these younger blokes come through. And sometimes that is, as much as I like to think that telling the boys to be on time is they rock up on time, like, yourself. And sometimes, that might be my only fault with some of these young kids is they're great workers, they're great kids, is that they rock up at 7:15 every day. I'm like, mate, you just need to be at 7.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to do something a bit uncharacteristic to help them move along. And I think that's really important that they know that I'm there for their best interests. And therefore, that's a really good platform for me to have a difficult conversation and say, listen, mate, this behavior here is, it needs to improve. And it doesn't mean, and I don't, like I said, I'm not a believer in firing people. I will always work with somebody to try and get them to the point. It's not malicious. I think if people are generally rocking up and having a go, I will always work with them. Like that's the caveat, obviously. If you're not doing that, or you're, deliberately doing stuff, or you're going out of your way to, do something that's not correct, then there's a very different conversation. But within the bounds of people who are actually actively trying to have a go and who have, are generally giving it on, I'll always work with them. I'll always help them try and move to the standard that we expect from them.
Yeah, yeah. And on top of that, if I can just add, what I also found is when we spoke about formalities earlier before and having things written down when it comes to quoting, and it's the same as with employees. I found that even when you do have these conversations with them, sometimes you do need to actually record that down somewhere, like an email or make a formal document. Yeah, because eventually that might get to a stage where you might have to show that you've spoken to them a few times. So yeah, that's another thing that used to be hard for me, trying to not make it look so formal by just having a chat with them. But then it's like, oh, now I've actually got to give you something in writing because you're pushing me to the next level,
Yeah, and I think I haven't necessarily done that very well in past that. It's actually that second step you just talked about then. But it's something that we are actively trying to improve on now. Like it is really important, I think, too. Like you said. And it's not, I think people kind of get a bit scared or intimidated by something that's a little bit more formalised. But like I said, like we said before about contracts, like I think it's a lot more for the best interest of both parties to have things clear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, it's been a very, very insightful conversation.
Thanks,
I think now you've given our listeners a lot to think about, and it's good to hear the different aspects of the business, and even like partnerships, like you say, like, not, you don't have to have every strength. You got to share that with your partner, like your brother, for instance, and just be aware of your limitations and then just work together. So, and I think what you guys are doing together must be working really well because business seems to be still going ahead.
Still here.
Still here, mate. But I think Hayden was right when you said that you're the guru, and now I know why he said that you were a mentor for him. So definitely glad to have you on the show. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you or see what you do, what's the best way there?
Just shoot me a message on Instagram or give me a bell. I think my phone's on the thing. I'll put it on there. If it's not, just give me a ring. I'm happy to have a chat. So, yeah, happy to help always.
No problem, no worries. To everyone, Before I end this, thank you very much for listening. Make sure that you're following Earthworks Hub on all the platforms. Go to earthworkshub.com.au and that will have links to all those platforms. It'll have links to all our directories so you can put your businesses on there, events, jobs. We've got a marketplace on there now if you want to sell something. Also, make sure you're tuning into our Sunday live sessions. So every Sunday, 8 p.m. on Instagram. I'll go live so you can come and have a chat on there and ask your questions. Sometimes I have guests on there as well. And then also, if you want to become a member and be a little bit more involved, become a member of our Patreon group and you'll get to see all the podcasts earlier, videos before everyone else. We do there's some chat groups in there and a whole bunch of stuff. So well worth the effort. And also we've got templates and resources as we spoke about in here. Sometimes you need templates to help you like JSA, SWIMs. I've got all that on the Patreon membership for members there. But that's it. Levi Adams from Adam Civil. Thank you very much for your time, man. It's been a good chat.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Anytime, man. And you're always welcome, man, to join us on our Sundays and throw your 20 cents in there.
Appreciate it.
No worries. Legend, man. Thank you. Thanks once again to everyone. Have yourselves a good day and I'll see you in the next show.
Yeah.
For tracks, obviously. On the lot.
He became steel resistant.